Peace. Hope you guys are having a wonderful evening. Set your weekend off right. Just making sure my stream's up and active. Let's see. If you guys could hear me, put an emoji of a acorn in the chat. It's saying I started. I don't know. What the hell's wrong with this thing? Just making sure my stream's up. Okay. Now we're golden. We're golden. I hope you guys are having a wonderful evening. Always, I am Sir Foul Player of Brooklyn, coming at you live with this single digit weekend Christmas stream, if you will. Damn, how did I set up my shit before? Wanted to talk about a few things. One of them being, I should probably put that in the comments. One of them being the whole the biggest fraud that the left chooses never to criticize, or I mean, because you'll have I'm more in left voting circles than I am right voting circles by any measure. In spite of the fact that I'm a new age conservative, trying to see if I could prop my phone on some shit. In spite of the fact that I'm a new age conservative, if you will, like even though I'm not, I mean, my granddad and my dad, both my granddads, I mean, they would never align with the rainbows, and I mean, because I'm a Latin dude, Puerto Rican dude of New York City. But I'm a new age conservative. In spite of that, though, or not, like I still am in more left-leaning circles, if you will. Not only the content that I take in on YouTube, but also in a personal life. Most of my friends were giving me shit about the candidate I voted for in 2020. And that's been going on for years, in spite of the fact that a lot of them have come around in 2024. Again, I'm a New Yorker, so a lot of New Yorkers, whether they were black, white, whatever, were very up in arms about the migrant problem that New York City was having. Nobody was like, besides yuppie idiot morons. Not many people were copacetic with the migrant problem that New York was facing. Let me get a notebook. But in spite of that, I tend to gravitate towards my people more. Being a so-called minority, like the content that I take in, the people that I know, my family, they're more liberal leaning, if you will. With as far as their voting goes, I gotta make that very clear. Like, cause I have friends that are big time Trump haters. That if given the opportunity, I mean, if they had to, for instance, um, have to make a choice whether they like wanted their own son to be trans or something. Like, these aren't people that'll say, "Oh, well, I love my son either way." Like, they'll give you the bad first. Like, hells no, I'd be pissed off. Like, even if they say I still love my kid. Like, they wouldn't give the politically correct answer. Like, which is like, well, I missed. Um, they wouldn't give the politically correct. Oh, well, I love my son. Blah blah blah. Like, or like whatever happens. Like, which I mean, you still would as a dad and whatever. But these are people like minorities. When we show when we reject certain things that we don't like, we're not politically correct about it. In most instances, we'll give you a very hard dose of how we don't like something, and usually we'll do that in anybody's face. Because I mean, like minority guys, by and large, like I mean, as far as America goes, like we're usually our conditions make us a little tougher. Like we're down to get into fights in the streets. I mean, I know a ton of people that have stabbed people, shot people, that have been stabbed, shot, gone to jail, whatever have you. So we're not very shy about our displeasure with things we don't like. So you really like you got to do the whole like introducing of the rainbow stuff very with a lot of guile. Like you can't just throw it on like minorities and thinking that it's going to be a easy walk in the park, if you will. In spite of that, though, minorities for some reason or another tend to vote Democrat in my lifetime. And in my lifetime, I've only been around Black and Latin people my whole life in New York City. Now I'm Shane, but um, a lot of people came to the had that come to God moment in 2024. I mean, and I had that moment more so leading into 2020, where where I started listening to the man that the media hated so much and demonized so much. I started listening to him more so leading into 2020, and then you guys know what happened in 2020. I, for one, in this channel, have always stated that the 2020 election wasn't up to par. Um, just look at the obvious thing. Joe Biden is a withering fool. He fell asleep yesterday at a meeting in Africa. This has been par for the course with Biden, falling all over the place, not impressive, stuttering, a liar. Yet somehow he was the most popular vote getter of all time, even 12 million more votes than Obama in 2008. I just, I'm part of the, I don't think that that fits my God given logic. I don't think that Biden was that popular. However, he still won the 2020 election. Maybe in the future we could go back and look at that election to see if there's funkiness. However, a lot of people I had that come to realization moment, I guess, in 2020, and I was entirely disenfranchised by the fact that I thought that 45 was cheated, if you will. Now, a lot of people, minorities, if you will, or so-called minorities. I hate using the word minority. I don't even like to refer to black people as black because black people of America um, are one of the groups that have been in this country the longest. I mean, like if you look at Irish people, black people have been here longer than them. That's going on white people's history. If you look at any group of Latin people, so-called um, black people have been there longer than them. So I think I'm trying to refrain from using the term black altogether, but for all intents and purposes, I use the term black to describe the so-called African Americans of the United States. Um, but in 2024, you had a lot of people that in the black community. Damn, I got shit in my eye again, bro. That rejected the liberals and voted for Trump in 2024. But you also had a large, very large share of Hispanic people that voted for Trump. I'm not sure if this number is for men or for Hispanics altogether, but they said that the number was 46%. And I was watching a few videos in which somebody. Also, I'll get to the doctor stuff and the pardoning stuff in after this. But you hear liberals explaining as to why black people, Latin people went and voted for the Republicans in 2024. And the way that they describe things, I mean, like, is racist. Honestly, it's outright racist. Now, I've been where they say that a lot, like that a lot of the men that voted for the Republicans and the black men that voted for Republicans and Latin men that voted for Republicans are quote unquote like low IQ voters. And you hear them talk about Latin people, and I'm talking about white liberals, and this is like a lot of interviews they were doing on the street and whatnot. When they speak about Hispanic voters, um, particularly the ones that defected and yo, peace, Rebel Boxing. How you doing, bro? How you? I hope you're having a happy holidays too. But and it's crazy brick out here too, man. But the amount of people that of quote unquote minorities that ended up voting for Trump this time around, when liberals describe them, white liberals particularly, they could say anything under the sun and describe them as anything under the sun, like low IQ voters. Oh well, they didn't know what they were voting for this time around. Like they'll never say like, listen, the YouTube fam, yeah, I was just up there. Next time I'm up there, we gotta link up. Yeah, definitely, man. I'm right off exit 15. When you make your way up here, I actually gotta head down there, but not like deep. I know you're deep in VA. I think. I gotta go to Culpeper. I think in a few days. But when they give the reasoning, they'll never say like, well, liberals suck. Like liberals make it to where you can't discuss things candidly, because if you're an enemy of the left, I mean, you're get out of here, bro. You're in. I never. I'm. We gotta talk, bro. The yeah, I'm actually going down there real soon, bro. But that's where the well that my I'll tell you that in the offline though. We gotta link up though, rebel. Like hit me up. But in spite of that, when you talk like liberals can't like say like the way they describe things are with such a blanket statement, like as if like Latin people and black people can't think for ourselves. They're extremely divisive. So for instance, they'll mention Latin people voting, which I'm a Latin dude myself. I'm Puerto Rican through and through. When they'll describe Latin dudes that rejected the liberals in 2024. I mean, the first time historically, like we've done it in mass like this. Like they'll even be divisive with that. Like basically trying to divide us versus like our women, divide us versus other minority groups, quote unquote. But it's basic, and they don't put that onus on anybody else. I don't hear them bitching like whether and to see if the Asians voted in that direction. I don't see them riffing about the Arabs where they may have voted. I mean, I saw a lot of Arab uproar and saying that they weren't messing with the liberals this time around. Not only because of the support for that Biden and Kamala had for the war in Gaza, but also for the fact that they're not with that bullshit either. Like they don't like the whole like being force fed, um, like perverted men that dress up as women, to be insisting on doing activities with children, such as reading books to children. You never see these perverted, mostly white men that dress up as women making a case to go read in an old people's home because the old people would probably chase them out. Their insistence, again, for mostly white men that dress up as women and make a caricature of black women, honestly, because like they usually try to act like the worst version of caricatures of black women. These perverted white men that dress up as women, which before used to be, there was actually a term for that, as far as um like a condition. Like there were actually people, there's a condition that describes men who dress up as women, and they get off on that. Like they get off on going out dressed like that. Um, However, these people in the past like 4 years, even more than that. I mean, like not only like they tried to make themselves into this minority group of their own that was insisting upon doing activities around children, whether you consider them innocent or not. I mean, like if you fear or if you live in a society where you think that you're not widely accepted, or that you're a victim at every turn and crying at every turn, that somebody doesn't take you serious as a woman, or I would like in that situation, I would think that that person would be in the cut, like not really showing out there like that. But I mean, I'm a dad. In my case, I mean, if you're insisting on doing that with my around my son, which honestly, the liberal bullshit was one of the reasons I pulled my son out of school in the seventh grade. He was 2 months into the seventh grade, and I pulled him right out of school. And my son's a grown man now. I mean, my son's in his 20s. Um, so we know we're going back more than 10 years, where I started peeping the liberal incursion. Also, too, I wasn't peeping shit back then because I was still living in New York. I was still pissed off that the cops were had stop and frisk powers. And honestly, I always was riffing about race, like in the neck in the sense of where we're victims, like Puerto Ricans, if you will. I will only speak for Puerto Ricans. I mean, I guess, because God forbid, with these beef looking for leftist defenders, if you will, they'll always try to bring up some shit like to try to divide you or throw you off your position, if you will. But at that stage, me being a Puerto Rican dude in New York City, I mean, like the fact that a few times I had been frisked, even though I'm like a regular working guy, that shit would piss me off. Uh, I feel you remember Anthony Baez? Is that the dude that got choked out by the cops in the Bronx? Like that he was throwing the football with his people. That I remember that there was a Puerto Rican cat, like I think 1990, real when I was like a real young person, that got choked out like with a nightstick by the NYPD. But I mean, me being a New York dude, yeah, I do remember that. I'm surprised you remember that because that was a long time ago. And that was one of the first ones that I remember. I think because they were pumping it on channel 41 and 47, the Spanish channel. But um, and I was more, as far as pissed off, later in life when I was like in my 30s, like because I left New York in my 30s. Um, and honestly, like right before I left New York, I was more politically like hot, I guess, about the fact that like now I'm like a grown dude. I'm not doing like crime. I'm a working dude. I work a regular job. I'm not on that hood shit like at all like anymore. Like um, I don't want to be bothered like by cops. So I mean like to have like somebody who I would consider like dorks, like frisk or whatever. Not that it was happening OD, but I mean like when I was a young man, like a cop punched me in my grill once. I mean like fucking and I had to eat it. But also when I was a young kid, an old cop at that, like put the beats on me, like quite frankly, beat me up. And I held that shit. And I didn't do shit either time, man. It's not because I'm a pussy either. I mean, like, but I know what it is. Like, I know that if I would have scuffled with them, I'm gonna be yammed up. My whole thing when I was in the streets was not being noticed. I'm still that way now. Um, so I held that stuff within me, especially, and honestly, it started, I guess, metastasizing itself more when I became a regular working man, and I had a good job, whatever. Like, now I became, I guess, more radicalized, but in a sense, as far as my verbiage goes. And my radicalization was basically everything had to go back to race. Like, all these white guys, all these white guys, all these white guys. I couldn't get a loan because like unfair loan practices. And I basically like would black pill myself at every turn. Like everything's impossible. Like, so I made things in my own mind, in a sense, harder because I always had that excuse of like the man in a sense keeping me down, or cops like doing this that. But and I wouldn't really, and I was just a really low point in my life. I was making money, and I went to like try to buy a house, and I couldn't afford a loan at that point. Like I didn't really bother like checking again right after that, like to see if I could do it. But a lot of things just seemed like I wasn't in control in a sense, and it just became convenient for me to blame the system and whatnot. Whereas you could lead your life, like now I know that you could lead your life um, without um, being in the system in a very limited capacity. Like you don't gotta be in the system at all times. I mean, like, and that's with whatever. Like, I mean, like, if you own your own shit, then you're the god of whatever the fuck you own. I mean, and that's not to do with cars. Like, I mean, like, because people try to make it seem like where instances where you don't get pulled, like the way in which you get pulled over, which I don't like being fucking pulled over. Like, and I just had an instance with one of these asshole cops in a town near me. Like, my shit got towed, and I mentioned that recently by some a Latin cop at that was being gun ho, and I'm pretty sure that he's Puerto Rican too, and he's an asshole, But it is, and in spite of the fact that it pissed me off and whatnot, I'm not gonna give it too much gas because then that's me wasting my own time. Like I'm not like at the end of the day, I just picture that cop's wife getting nailed by somebody that looks like me. And that's enough solace. I don't need anything more. If I get my get back on him in some other lifetime, I'm cool enough with that. Where you live now? Oh, yo, and if I can't see your comments, it's because I'm doing this shit low tech, and I'm reading the comments off my TV. But I actually live in New Jersey now. Like I live 5 minutes from Giant Stadium, if you're familiar with the area, like near Montclair, if you will. But yeah, and it's honestly like moving out of New York and thankfully like moving out of New York when I did because I dipped off like 2016. Imagine me living in New York right now with all this fucking migrant bullshit. I mean, you really can't like pack the hammer. Yeah, near Meadowlands, like 5 minutes from Meadowlands. You know what I'm saying? Like, but and not that I didn't walk around with a hammer many times in New York, but it's a risk. I mean, like, and that's a 5 year risk. Like, but when I went to pick up my mom's for Thanksgiving, like I had Thanksgiving and I brought it here. Um, there were tons of thirsty, like ass looking migrant dudes grilling, like, and that Black Friday's on for them too. Like, Black Friday's the day after Thanksgiving, but they're looking for a come up. A lot of them do. Like, I saw one dude, like, little teams of dudes on scooters, and they're just looking for a victim. And a lot of people be like, oh, well, if you know how to navigate the streets, like you ain't gonna get in all that shit. Listen, I've been navigating the streets my whole life. I mean, as far as New York goes, I know I've chilled, got into shit in Harlem. I've chilled, got into shit in Queens. I've chilled, got into shit in Staten Island, hustled in Staten Island too. Um, the Bronx, I mean, I've chilled and got dirty in the Bronx as well. And I'm not saying like as a tourist either. I mean, I've been in scuffles all over New York. Like, and it's not like I don't know how to navigate like this whole like wave of new migrants that are with the shits that have ended up in New York. No, I just don't want to be doing that shit. And honestly, like if I'm one dude, and like a lot of times these are not like one guy. It's like 3 people, 4 people, and some of them are legit, like stupid, like crazy, like retard. Like they don't know like how to play the boundaries. Like a lot of New York dudes, I guess, like back in the day, like, they wouldn't violate, if you will. Like some of these dudes just be violating, like they be doing dumb shit to women and whatnot. So I mean, like my chances of having to take it there, like by just living in New York, especially these last 8 years, I mean, God knows like where I would have been right now. So thankfully, I left New York City. But a lot of when I go to Sunset now, mind you, a lot of the Puerto Ricans are dipping from my neighborhood because it's unaffordable. But Even Mexican cats that I know in Sunset, the black cats that I know in Sunset, like my neighborhood, Sunset Park, Brooklyn, um, none of them are like pro migrant. Like none of them will tell you some stupid shit like these liberals do. Well, who's gonna pick our fruit? Like who? Do you like it's you? Do you hear that bullshit all the time? I mean, like we'll find other ways to pick fruit. I mean, the biggest factor is that the fruit is being by and large made in America. We'll figure the rest out. If people are hungry, the fruit will get picked. Believe me. And it's not like we need more migrants to pick fruit. Like you get fruit right now and vegetables. Do you need more migrants to pick? Like the ones that were picking fruit already, like become engineers or some shit and doctors. Where they're not like where we're gonna need a whole new group of the worst, like unvetted migrants coming into the country. Like not one bit. And here in my little suburb of New York, New Jersey, you have a lot of migrants that I don't know if they're doing it legally or illegally, but and a lot of them are illegal. Like a lot of them didn't go through the whole process of legitimizing themselves, and they should honestly. But what I wanted to say is that a lot of these dudes that are migrants in New Jersey, I mean, I get a lot of construction things done and carpentry, little projects that I have going on here and elsewhere. But a lot of these people were working for some company like 4 years ago, and now they're starting their own companies with 3 or 4 migrants, doing electricity, doing masonry. So when you add a bunch of more migrants, it's kind of like screwing up their hustle. You know, like they don't want this. Like none of them want that stuff. And you have people that don't speak a lick of English that are running like basically limited liability corporations in New Jersey, that own a home in New Jersey. It's not cheap living out here. This shit is expensive. But they're popping off the American dream for themselves, which I mean, if they're getting after it, I mean, by all means, like I'm rooting for those people. But the ones that we have in New York, um, and throughout the country, like are unvetted by and large. The at the border, they're not doing the screening process. They're just letting people in. And other countries are not stupid. Like they know what's up. They know what was happening at the border. They know that these people aren't being vetted. They know they're not being screened, or if it is, it's minimally. So they're sending in the worst of the worst, and in addition to sending in drugs, and we have more drug addicts in this country than we ever did before. But I'll always get a dumb response to all these things, like, oh, well, what about people that that do drugs? There's no right. I mean, it's basically like these debates that you have with people that defend the left that will run you in circles. I mean, and they just don't want to admit that I just don't like Trump, and that's the only thing I decide anything on. Like, my hate for Trump is basically um my how all my decisions are made. Like, bringing up Trump at every turn, and after a while you hear all those things, and like many people in 2024, when it came time to vote, that choice, to either A, continue to just hate on Trump and vote for somebody who's brain dead like Biden or Kamala, or and allow the and continue to allow the illegal immigration that we have at this rate. Like, the choice was very easy for people. And on top of that, everybody's broke. I mean, like throughout the world, yeah, but in America, America is the best country in the world. I mean, whether you hate this country or not, whether you feel like the byproducts of the past are still affecting you today, at the end of the day, I mean, like, if you leave it to anybody who had to start their life, I mean, they would start their lives here in this country. I mean, the evidence is clear. You're seeing people in mass trying to make their way into this country. in spite of the fact that right now this country is probably the wackest it's ever been since I've lived in it. I mean, this shit is worse than any point that I remember. Even the burnt down New York days and the crack era were not as dangerous as it is now. It looked more fucked up, yes. As far as New York City, like during the crack era, it looked way more messed up than what it looks like now. But we're getting there. I mean, we're certainly trying to catch up to the '90s crack era. So again, I mean, like, when a lot of people will make excuses for the left as to why so many minorities voted for Trump this time around or voted against Kamala this time around, but they'll never get to the root of the issue. I mean, like, they'll like try to rationalize it. They'll even make racist statements as in these people are low IQ voters. But when you're telling me that the only reason, which most of the left, like in their, or most of the people that are just Trump haters that are bigging up the left and making excuses for the left, when your reasoning is basically everything, no Trump, no Trump, no Trump, Trump bad, Trump bad, Trump bad, that sounds more low IQ than anything. And also, that's emotional people, like, and to hear men particularly like get on this high horse of like shitting on somebody who will give them reasons as to why I don't want or didn't want Kamala and Joe Biden or Democrats to win at any turn. I could list off a bunch of reasons, but you tell them to list a reason as to why they're voting in that direction, and they'll basically at some point give it 3 or 4 sentences. It's gonna revert back to Trump, like, for the left or leftist defenders. Their reasoning always, 100% of the time, like, has to do with something with Trump. And I get it. I mean, is Trump a perfect candidate? No, I don't get it actually. But I'll forward it by saying, is Trump a perfect candidate? No. For instance, like my brother Rebel Nine and myself, like I'm a big time advocate of one having the capability to defend oneself in legal measures that give you the ability to carry that steel whistle around. I'm a big fan of the steel whistle. I think that the biggest power that's walking around, whether that be with the military or with police, they carry steel whistles themselves, hand cannons, if you will. I would like to be at a tie with them, at least. I mean, I would like to be comparable to what they got going on, and let my ability play out against whoever is also holding one. But the liberal left, I mean, like, they're anti steel whistles. It's basically a party of will hold all the power up here. Nobody that looks like you is gonna hold any real power, like, because there's no black or Latin politician that has any real power. Face it. I mean, even at the Congress, Hakeem Jeffries was propped up there, like, just because they were gonna go into the minority at Congress. But none of these people that are in Congress that look like another so-called minority um, has anything to say. They're bags of air. Like, they only go on like emotion. I mean, and I think emotion, or to have emotion be your principal driver, is shit bitches do, honestly. I mean, like, and I don't want to be offensive, but women could vote however they want, but at the end of the day, I mean, in this house, I mean, I'm the leader of this house, and you know, I think a lot of men have been neutered in a sense to not speak in certain ways because you don't want to offend certain people. And honestly, it's mostly like women that try to set the trend as to you know voting based on them offing stuff within their uterus. I mean, if you're boning without the use of a condom with some rugged ass dude you just met, and you think that I should be paying more for groceries because you want to have the ability to have a procedure done on yourself in the most convenient sense, like, you don't want to go to another state that authorizes it, um, then move out of that state. I mean, I was told when it came to the jab, I mean, like, get another job if you don't want it. Or these people should be put in camps, like, and re-educated. These people don't believe in the science. When it comes to stuff that the left wants, um, they don't want the inconvenience of, you know, having everything laid out in front of them in a sense. It's mostly, honestly, uh, principled when it comes to the convenience factor, because they don't want you to have convenient a house. I mean, like, yeah, like they'll throw a 25,000 like grant for you to buy a house. Like, you can't buy a house in Mississippi, a down payment for 25 grand. I mean, like, so I don't know what that would have done, and that was what Kamala Harris regime was pumping out, that they would give grants of 25 grand to for a home loan, if you will. But I mean, that's nothing. But all the benefits that they were offering is basically like, we're not Trump. There's racists over there. We're not racist though. I mean, which is bullshit because liberals are the biggest racists. And what else they were offering? And basically, you can have an abortion whenever you want, however you want, no questions asked. Your body, your choice. But none of that argument was in play when it came to the jab. When it came to the jab, it's basically our choice. Your body, if you're a rainbowist and you're willing to take several jabs and boosters. Otherwise, it's basic, like it's a bunch of convoluted fascists. That's what the left are. Like, if you don't get in line with them, they'll eat you alive. Um, and a lot of minority men, they don't want to be neutered, and they don't want to be like some of us. When it came to 2024, they know what we know what it is. Like, I mean, like, we have kids. We want them to buy homes at some point in the future. We want them to be with women that are not um, behaving like the whores that popular society and the entertainment industry that's largely run by the left want them to be. Like, we want hope for our kids. Right now, like, a lot of people in this country, and not just the men, have been feeling, in a sense, hopeless. And we're trying to, as a last ditch effort, I guess, we we're hoping that voting differently in 2024 could be something that a driver that pushes America into that direction, like where everybody benefits. I mean, and we'll figure everything else out when it's time to figure it out. But right now, we're like, a lot of people saw that we're in kind of a crisis timeline based on how things are going, or how things were going. Now, could Trump flip the script and like not be the candidate that he sold himself to be? I mean, that may be a possibility. But I already lived 4 years under Trump, and things were a lot better then. In spite of the fact that I knew that even back then, Republicans were doing a lot of moves that were shading Trump, or not. The party wasn't 100% aligned with Trump. Now he has a chance to really see who's who and what's what, especially within the Republican Party. The Republican Party, there's more snakes there than there are in the Democrat Party. If you, when Biden was nominating these picks for his cabinets, most of these Republicans, 100% of them were in line and ready to vote and help the Democrats get their people in, for the sake of getting back to business, the business of Washington. Now you'll see a lot of these senators in the Republican side that were cool with signing off on Biden's picks, giving a hard time and not saying that they are going to sign off on Trump's picks, or making it seem like they're thinking about it, because the swamp is a swamp. And Trump is crazy enough and that much of an outsider to like really flip things on his head and gut out DC. I want mass change in DC. I don't want to go back to business as usual. Even the business of 2016 to 2020 during the Trump era, I think things have been getting out of pocket politically in this country since 2004. I mean, like 2003 era, like where the prices of houses started going up crazy. Um, Things in this country have been out of control, and it takes gutting to get things right. And that whole gutting process that may happen in DC, that only one candidate would be capable of pulling it off, Trump, because Kamala Harris would have gotten in DC and things would have been back to mass migration, um, not being able to speak out on the rainbow agenda, making that illegal. Nah, we ain't want any of that stuff. Um, so to be rid of that stuff and to be rid of maybe the sources of how these things come to play out, like what finances these things, why are all these companies willing to risk it all and go broke on behalf of pushing agendas that are not popular with people throughout the world, but with Americans, you know, it remain like I want to see what financed a lot of this stuff because these things didn't happen naturally in a vacuum. Like a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, all these rainbow characters started being put in movies because that's what the market wanted." I mean, but look outside and go to any city. Do you see that many rainbows in your regular life, out and about? And they're very noticeable. And not all of them broadcast it. Not all of them say that they're part of the rainbow community. But you could tell. I mean, at times, do you see tons of them? You could tell like Puerto Rican dudes. I mean, if I could tell, like if there were a bunch of Puerto Ricans in the mall right here by my house, Mall of the American Dream, and I saw Puerto Rican dudes. I'm a Puerto Rican dude. You couldn't probably tell by looking at me off the rip unless you were a New Yorker. But I would be able to tell. Now, sussy dudes, flamboyant dudes, I'm able to tell them many times too, even in their walking and whatnot. Do I see them all over the place in mass, even though that a lot of like that stuff is now acceptable, which good for them, I guess. But it's not like you saw a wave of tons of like rainbowers that were coming out of the woodwork. Thank God we're free now. Like that were piling into these movies that were catered to them. Like in fact, the movie industry is broke now because it catered to them. And I feel that that stuff happened not naturally. I think that that stuff was an investment made by other parties where they incentivize studios to push out that kind of garbage. And I would like to get to the bottom of that stuff. Like, are these outside entities? Are these financial institutions like BlackRock and whatnot? And like some people say, I would just like to get to the nitty gritty of these things, like, because I don't want a repeat of that stuff. I don't want like for Americans to be rocked to sleep and then we get pushed a new virus in 2035 and you know, this one's more cereals than the last one, and you got to get a shot. Like, like, no, I want our country to be far more intelligent, far more vigilant, and far more suspicious um, than we have been. We've been rocked to sleep. And having an outsider like a Trump, who now already has experience of being in the White House, the experience of being out of the White House and still having a lot of power and pull while he was outside of the White House. He knows who's who, who's a traitor, who's a rider. So I think a lot of like the change that I would like to see in DC, the only candidate realistically that had the capabilities and the ability to pull it off was Trump. So I'm glad he's in office. Um, but when we talk about the investigations that should be happening, it doesn't only bleed into the entertainment financial sector, if you will, and pushing the rainbow agenda. It also has to do with investigations that should be happening with the rat that I have as my thumbnail, the fraud sheet, Tony Fauci, one of the biggest frauds in American history. I mean, I'm glad that I could say that now. I mean, my channel's not going to get any traction anyhow, but why not go for broke? But one of the biggest frauds in the history of America was Anthony Fauci. And he's somebody that the liberal left lionized, idolized. Um, they looked at him as a god. Science was the god. And Fauci was the disciple of science to the left. The mask was the left's robe, and the vaccine was their Eucharist. You know, the liberal left, and this was all framed out in a really grimy way. I mean, it was really they must have planned this stuff out, but they made it to where you were basically dunking on Trump by taking the vaccine because Trump supporters don't trust the vaccine, and that's reason enough for you to take it. Um, because there were a lot of people that were hesitant about the vaccine. You know, when Trump authorized and the vaccine by Operation Warp Speed, because it was Trump's vaccine that Biden mandated the vac. So to be clear, the vaccine that was approved and put out to the public, which I don't agree with one iota, um, that was actually made possible by Operation Warp Speed, where they cut a lot of the legal red tape and authorized the use of a vaccine. Because I'm pretty sure that Trump powwowed with the medical people like Fauci and asked them if they could come up with a vaccine expediently. Otherwise, he was just going to open things up back to business as usual. So where they magically came up with a vaccine, which would have taken many years to try to test, and a lot of red tape would have would have taken a lot of time to approve in a normal setting. But since it was an emergency setting, and the medical experts already had one ready to go, um, Trump allowed it to be put out there. Now he didn't mandate it. He didn't say you got to take it. Trump actually came out and suggested other things that should have been taken instead of a vaccine to combat COVID, which with these suggestions, Trump was actually right. Now that we have the a year or two to look back, because a lot of people like consider like the whole vax, COVID, Fauci, they look at it as ancient history. I always bring it up because a lot of people like act like, oh, like, you know, like I should just forget it because it helps them feel okay with their hate of Trump, or with their want to defend the left at every turn. You know, they want you to forget that most people were forced by way of mandates to take that jab. You know, and again, speaking as a Puerto Rican quote unquote minority from New York City, a New Yorican, if you want to add a little salsa, you know, to it, because I enunciate and speak like a white guy. So I gotta wear a sombrero, even though Puerto Ricans don't wear one, so that it could be accepted as a minority. You know, I gotta talk with a like, you know, even though I speak Spanish, but I'm not gonna do all that. But you know, a lot of minorities were the biggest communities of vaccine hesitant people. In fact, Black Americans were the biggest community of vaccine hesitant people in all of America. Now, if somebody wants to prove me wrong on that, well, you could go ahead and look up the statistics on your own. But most people just bring up an emotional argument or a case of a few assholes that they know in their regular life as if that's applicable to the whole world. No. Um, unless you were a totally down in the weeds, I hate Trump. Taking the vaccine is basically dunking on uh, conservatives, like kind of thinking person. Most black people, especially in my cipher, I mean New York City, it really came down to shit off get off the pot when it came to taking the vax. With many jobs, it was they were forcing or they were really pushing to get the mandates in New York. In places like Burger King in East New York, they were demanding that you show your papers that you took the jab to eat at these establishments. So much so that they actually arrested a few black people for not wanting to show their papers. Um, but the fact that minorities were the biggest vaccine hesitant communities in this country. I'm not gonna forget that. I don't forget that easily. And again, I have a son. Like I don't want him to enter the workforce and for some job to say, "Well, you gotta take this." And the reason that many people were so gun ho about that largely had to do with that bastard Fauci. Fauci's a piece of human garbage. Um, some people attribute Fauci to the AIDS epidemic that took place in this country and withholding things that could have been cures. And I'm not even going to go back to that. I mean, I think Robert Kennedy actually wrote a book on that. Some people say that the Dallas Buyers Club had to, like, the affected, or the people that were affecting the gay community in that movie. I didn't watch that movie. Was Dr. Fauci or a placeholder for Dr. Fauci, but or one of these popular movies. I don't care. But Fauci gets away with being wrong about most of that whole era, if you will. Like Fauci alluded to the fact that the the pandemic was not started in a lab in China when Trump suggested it was started or it came from a lab in China. Fauci said otherwise, and they made Trump look like a fool for suggesting that it came from a lab in China, when in fact, now in front of Congress, Fauci says that it came from a lab in China. And even before he testified in Congress, like on camera, behind closed doors, he alluded to the same shit when he was told to testify in Congress in a closed door session. He actually admitted to the fact that it was not originated from natural means. Yeah, it originated from a lab in China. They also admitted to funding of the research that ultimately gave us that virus, if you will. I forgot what it was called, in which they would basically, I forgot what it's called. I'll think of it in the span of making this video. But this was something that they were experimenting on that under the Obama administration, those kind of experiments were considered too dangerous to have in America. So with these shady dealings with people like Fauci and Peter Strzok, I think his name is, some of these people from the NIH and FDA, these administrative bureaus in relation to medicine and the medical fields were the ones that were financing these studies, which eventually made their way into America. Now, if America, supposedly, we look at China as one of our top rivals, I mean, that's militarily, that's financially. How is it that we're doing these things in these other countries and it's all good? I mean, you also hear stories that there may have been labs in the Ukraine. Again, I mean, this is Biden's playground, like, but a lot of these things that I'm mentioning now, I mean, on this platform, I still get like the drilled for speaking in this fashion on this platform now. My numbers always stay at 461, like subscriber wise, or around 460 of late, because I speak the way I do, and because YouTube ain't trying to throw a bone in the direction of a quote unquote conservative minority. But you know, if I would have said any of these points in 2021, 2022 regarding Fauci, regarding the fact that mandates should be illegal, um, I would have been booted off this platform. Um, but that's not something that these platforms, now we know, didn't even decide on their own. Like, I mean, they did it to defend the left, or at times they did it because they were pressured by the goons in these government agencies that were putting the pressure on them to make the jab seem safe and effective, make it seem that it'll stop the virus. There's a they they had 100% success rate of stopping the virus, like Borla, the head of vaccine, was saying during that time that they had a South African study that showed that the jab was 100% effective in stopping COVID. I don't see Albert Bourla, the head of Pfizer, you know, where with the left calling him out at every turn, saying, "Oh well, he should be gone, whatever." And they do that even less with Fauci. They still look at Fauci like he's some sort of god. And that's because honestly, the left and most people in this country, but mostly the left, they don't read. Like these people only, they're cool with getting a headline, reading a little bit, hearing a little bit of Rachel Maddow and going on about their business, and now they're politically caught up, if you will. Like they have all the news that they need, you know? And a lot of it is basically, much of what you see is like how this country in the last 4 years especially got to where it got to, even so much so as um, electing Joe Biden. Because you got to ask yourself and be honest. Like, I mean, would we had Joe Biden running this country had it not been for COVID? Now, a lot of what was told to me about COVID on YouTube and on TV, and I ignored it. I believe in the human body. I believe the human body could get over anything. Um, so it's not like it affected me that much personally. I mean, like it affected other people, but much of what was being told to us was basically under the premise of Trump is the personification of evil, and everyone who is against Trump is doing some angelic, holier than thou activity. I mean, everybody on um, these talking heads of the media, whether The View and Rachel Maddow and CNN, they were considered as these arbiters of truth. They actually told you like, don't research on your own regarding COVID on CNN during the COVID era, if you will. And people just forget that. But going back to what I was saying, a lot of these people were lionized, or they were made to be, they were put on a pedestal because they were going against Trump. I mean, there's no other reason, honestly. Like, it's not like they were right. Was Fauci right about anything? I mean, tell me what Fauci was right about in great detail. And tell me what, like, Trump was saying was wrong regarding COVID. He wasn't wrong about COVID. I mean, it seems like Trump was right far more than Fauci was right, especially looking at things in hindsight. But in the moment, I mean, Fauci, Pfizer, all these the powers that be was saying that the vaccine was safe and effective, and heaven forbid you told them that they were wrong, because you would get censored, demonetized, whatever have you. Doctors were thrown off Twitter. Um, Doctors that invented the mRNA technology, who were speaking against the current jab, were kicked off of Twitter. and clicked off of social media because they didn't agree with Fauci. I mean, and they were looked at as, just because they don't agree with Fauci, that they're pro-Trump. Just because you're not willing to, like how they frame everything. Just because you're not willing to go broke for Ukraine, you support Putin. That's how the left is. Like, the left is only about, like, framing you in a place in which you're the enemy, and unless you agree with them. And Fauci was one of the gods of the left. If there was any justice in the world, every investigation under the sun should be wielded against Fauci. Um, Fauci should be under the jail if it were up to me. He's a traitor in my eyes. I mean, like, and now we have instances of people playing Pop Warner football, young kids that are dying. I mean, I have personal friends that Trump haters, mind you, and, like, again, like, you had a propensity of people that hated Trump, at least in my cipher or my little group of friends, that hated Trump, and they were the ones that were getting the jab in more frequency. These are the people that were getting the jab in addition to boosters. Mind you, I'm living in liberal New York, or my friend group is based out of liberal New York. So I know a lot of people that, I mean, probably took 4 jabs, maybe more. And I know a lot of people now that, the same group of people that were, anti-Trump. So I'm gonna take the Fauci ouchie so that I could screw it to Trump somehow. Like, they were rationalizing things, not outwardly, of course, many times. Some were doing it outwardly, but they were rationalizing, taking Fauci's Holy Eucharist as a screw you to Trump. But a lot of these same people now, are having heart issues, and they could relate it to everything else, with the exception of that shit that they may have ingested that ultimately didn't even work. These are the same people that were getting COVID over and over and over. I, for one, I mean, I had to wear a mask a couple times, but I would always test the limits and go into Trader Joe's and go into Lowe's and go into Home Depot without it. I mean, when they told me to wear it, I would wear it, and then I take it off. Like, I'm making it a hard job for you. If you want to be a tyrant and suggest I put it on, I mean, then I'm just gonna be a bratty teenager type and do it to where now you're gonna spend your time at work monitoring me if you want to enforce this. But as far as COVID tests, but other times, I mean, I would never wear a mask. If somebody told me that I knew, like, oh, like, are you not gonna wear, like, I would basically cut them off. You know, if somebody wore a mask in my car, they weren't getting in my car. You know, I'm not like, I can't see what your face is telling me behind the mask. And honestly, people look like fucking wieners with mask on. I see people with masks in cars, and it revolts me because they're usually fat too. That's what pisses me off. Like, they're doing this for their health, but they're pale and they're fat and they're fucking disgusting looking. Anime watching, gross people. But they're more healthy than somebody who's jacked out just because they're obedient and took the Fauci ouchie at a high rate. But I know a lot of people within my friend group that are now having heart issues, and I'm not gonna be the one to break it to them, even though I know what it is. I know what it is. I know that there's this outside factor that they may not want to put into their head, um, and you know, and they don't want to look past that. Maybe it could be this, because a lot of them made it a personal stance. A lot of them looked at it as, like, this is, I'm doing this thing. I hate this man so much that, and they would put that stuff on Facebook. They would put that stuff on Twitter. They would put that stuff within their conversations as to, like, anything that is suggested to be anti-Trump, I'm with it. And unfortunately, the jab was one of these things. I hope that nobody suffers from the jab. Listen, I took a lot of shit from people that were suggesting that people like me should be put in camps and re-education camps. And I had to be the bigger man. I had to. And so there's a lot of times, even during that time, where I would tell myself, listen, I hope these motherfuckers pass, or like sometimes I wish like the worst on these people. Like I didn't want to build with these people. I still don't in many cases, because now a lot of them have come. Like I've had conversations on this channel with people that I actually got love for, that will basically rationalize anything so long as it doesn't seemingly give Trump a talking point. And it's gotten to that. Like it's gotten to the point where now like people try to defend a group in the jab that was pushed out of nowhere, along with stuff that, in terms of vaxes, that we've been taking since we were kids, which I don't agree with that shit either. Like I don't agree with all these things that they make our kids take, that are required to go into school. I regret doing that shit with my son. Like honestly, and I think my son was affected by those things. I don't never know. Like I mean, I can't say, but I do think that there was an effect on my own son. Like for this damn industry that um, during the COVID era was basically given carte blanche to lie, um, to be the arbiter to the two, to be the arbiters of who was lying and who wasn't. So yeah, I don't want these things to happen again. And if you don't, if you're too stupid to not find these things as like important, like for mankind to exist in a world in which mandates aren't a thing, or mandates can't be sprung on upon like humanity or you, like I'll fight on your behalf. I think you're an idiot. Like so and I want to like, and if you have kids potentially, or like I don't think that your brain could put their best interest ahead of your emotion. Your emotion for Trump, which is hate. Like I think that a lot of people are too emotional and are too dumb to really advocate for things that may benefit them and their children. So in spite of them, I have to be the bigger person and fight for these things as best as I could. I don't want to be the front man for any of these movements or none of that stuff. At the end of the day, I'm a father, and I look at these things in defense of my son, yes, but also I don't want people like the quote unquote minority community, who were the biggest vaccine hesitant community in America and throughout the world, to be put in a position in which we're forced to do these things by way of mandate. The flight like, and that damn fool, brain dead bastard Biden actually took a victory lap and said that 99% of the airline industry had taken the jab because of the mandates that he was suggesting or enforcing. And people shouldn't forget that. The military was forced to take the jab. Um, sure, not like some of them actually fought valiantly and weren't that didn't take it ultimately. Some very small cases that there are anomalies of people that fought the good fight and didn't get kicked out the military and didn't take the jab, but most of them did. I mean, I have family in the military right now, and I don't. That's sad. I mean, and if it affected them physically, which I know of people that I can only say that that's what has affected them physically. That's the only outlier in these people in our lives that's come into society in the last 10 years that has now all of a sudden caused spikes with these heart diseases that are popping up out of nowhere, with these rapid turbo cancers that are popping up out of nowhere. Yeah, to me, I mean, I have to look at these things suspiciously, but a lot of people are still not catching up to even that. I mean, a lot of people are just acting like it is what it is, business as usual. Like so I do these things um, so that your kids eventually don't get caught up in the trick bag. And the left were the biggest defenders, pushers, soldiers of all things that had to do with this fascist way of pushing their agenda. I mean, and fascism is basically you have control of many other levels of power, including the media, including corporations, and they all ride with you. That's basically fascism. So, I mean, were all corporations and all the media riding with Trump? I've never seen that happen once since Trump has appeared in the picture politically. But were all the media, um, all the mechanisms of power aligning themselves with the Biden regime and Fauci regime? Um, you bet you. And anybody who debates that is a liar, honestly, and they're just trying to defend the left. But I would still fight for people that are liars because they don't know better, honestly. Like, I mean, and they are the true low IQ voters. So a low, like the liberals say, in referring to people that rejected the Kamala Harris in the 2024 election, where they refer to them as low IQ voters. No, I think the low IQ people are the idiots that would rationalize anything that the left says, particularly the jab, um, when I know a lot of people in their heart of hearts were hesitant. A lot of these same people, like when it comes to like the black minority community, like will refer to the Tuskegee and like the experiments that were wielded by the U.S. military on black soldiers, and they always tout or yell about Tuskegee being a reason as to why we shouldn't trust the medical industry until 2021. And then all of a sudden, the medical industry was fantastic because the god of the medical industry, Fauci, was beefing with Trump. So I mean, like, nah, I'm not gonna allow for that kind of set tripping. Um, and I'm gonna call it out where I see it. It just shouldn't be acceptable. Um, and if anybody needs to be investigated more than anybody, it's definitely Fauci and the people that financed him, the people that run with him. These people got to go. But I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I'm about to watch the Army um, football game here in a minute, in addition to Boise State versus UNLV. Um, but I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. And if you're finding this video after the fact during this live stream, do like, comment, share, subscribe. Help me out as much as I could fight this algorithm of the platform that I'm speaking upon now. At some point, I will bring it to a platform that's less sensorial. But until then, I work with what I got, and I want to be where most of the people are at, which is this crummy platform. But help me fight the mechanisms that don't allow channels like mine to grow by helping it grow on your own account by um, sharing these videos and the regular minutia that everybody else says. Like, share, comment, subscribe. With that, I'm out. Have a wonderful weekend. Peace.